Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best.
Oh, she had a little welcome wagon crew come visit her last night, huh?
She had these thugs surround her home, and neighbors telling residents of the Fox affiliate in Seattle, several residents used their own vehicles to block the protesters moving from moving further down the street where her home is located. It was not peaceful. They were here to intimidate, scare people, scare children. There were children out there, and they were asking them what schools they went to. They were yelling the most horrible things you've ever heard in your life, said one Seattle resident, Jamie Rulestone, Washington Times reporting. Chief Best warned that protesters who engage in violence and intimidation are detracting from the racial justice message sparked by the killing of George Floyd. These direct actions against elected officials, and especially civil servants like myself, are out of line with and go against every democratic, small d, principle that guides our nation. The county sheriff said on Sunday he would deploy whatever resources necessary to protect Chief Best and her family.
And her neighbors are helping out, too. Trying to keep her safe, using their vehicles to try and block them from storming their neighborhood. Kind of sounds like Lori Lightfoot's neighborhood, but she has Chicago police to help her out.
Oh, whatever resources are necessary to protect Chief Best. Oh.
Are we talking federal troops?
Whatever resources are necessary to protect the police chief. What about statements to that effect to protect ordinary run-of-the-mill residents, ordinary run-of-the-mill businesses? This is the same city council, per a letter from Chief Best, that basically told businesses and residents of Seattle, you're on your own, because the Seattle City Council won't let police use the non-lethal force required to quell violent mobs. Oh, but the law enforcement will bring whatever resources are necessary to protect Chief Best. Well, that must be very comforting to Seattle business owners and residents who are not on board, even if they don't like Trump, it's immaterial, who are not on board with the lawlessness that the city indulged. Gosh, I wonder where these protesters, I wonder where they got the idea they could go to Chief Best's house and take over the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Where could they have gotten this idea?
Let me guess. Portland.
How about the autonomous zone in Seattle?
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Chaz. Or what did it end up being, Chad?
The city government gave over the city center to the mob, and then they can't believe that the mob would come for Chief Best. Yeah, golly. Why this is happening and why this is happening now, it's not the killing of George Floyd, because as has been pointed out many times, these the violent individuals, they don't care about George Floyd's life or death.
It just gives them a reason.
Why is it happening now? And why is it happening where there is no fear of going after a city police chief or a mayor or anybody else? Because of the response that we as a country have provided. What's been the response? You have the moral high ground. Not everybody in the country, but I'm talking about these big city mayors and the city councils and some of the federal politicians running rhetorical cover for them. You have said to them, by appeasing them, you have the moral high ground. And then you're shocked when they behave like they have the moral high ground. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined again by Kevin Brock, who is a former Assistant Director of Intelligence for the FBI. He was FBI Special Agent for 24 years. He was also the Principal Deputy Director, was the Principal Deputy Director of the National Counterterrorism Center. And he joins us now. Kevin, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning, Dan and Amy.
Morning.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You wrote a piece talking about the plan that China and Russia has to make America subservient to their interests, to depose America as the world superpower. And you suggest that it has nothing to do with Russians and Chinese carrying it out, Russian and Chinese nationals carrying it out, because they have all the help they need from the American left.
Yeah, that's correct. Traditionally the FBI has documented and provided ample intelligence over the last few decades of the intentions, particularly of Russia, now more and more China as well, to enact a plan where they divide America, where they pick at our scabs, and we have some, where they try to portray us as a disunified country. That strategy is the aim of that strategy is to get Americans to view themselves as divided, break our will, dispirited, and therefore unable or unwilling politically, economically, militarily to respond to the goals of Russia and China around the world. This is a well-documented strategy. We see it being played out acutely this summer through all the riots that we're seeing in major urban areas around the country, as you pointed out, Seattle and Portland in particular, Minneapolis. This is all part and parcel of a pattern of a strategy that is being enacted by actors, willing actors, sometimes witting, sometimes dupes, that are going out on the street and agitating for fundamental change in America. Again, as you point out, kind of surfing on the backs of legitimate racial justice protests, turning them violent to enact their agenda, which is decidedly anti-American, anti-capitalist.
And with respect to the response since you mentioned Minneapolis, so far as more than 100 police officers have left the Minneapolis police force. That's down about 10%. The expectation is the force could be down by a third by year's end. Interestingly, there is a corresponding increase in crime and a decrease in the number of stops and proactive police activity in Minneapolis. So how does that response feed into what foreign interests are trying to do to disrupt America?
Well, obviously the disruption's pretty plain, and you're exactly right. We're seeing a trend around the country of impact on the morale of police departments as police come under attack unjustly, out of proportion, certainly out of proportion to the bad acts that may have happened here and there around the country. They're among the elites, among the people who are running these cities, in the backyards of the mayor of Seattle, in the backyards of the chief of police there. Then all of a sudden, actions are taken to dismantle Chaz and become a little tougher with the rioters. They're more than happy to stand down and allow crime and rioting, refusing to prosecute the cases being brought to them by the police, and standing down. So we have this phenomenon of career prosecutors and career investigators suddenly retiring or moving on to new professions. So the defund police movement is having its impact, and we are accordingly seeing crime rise in our major urban cities around the country.
Well, Mr. Brock, how do you think this is going to end, and when is this going to end? When is enough enough? When will they get what they want? Which I hope they don't, but I just, is this going to go on for the foreseeable future?
I think that the intimidation tactics need to be confronted by Americans of goodwill. America is not a systemically racist country. I know that sounds like heresy in today's world, but that's only because we have seen a broadening of the definition of racism in this country to where every little act seems to be suspected of racism. The way food is packaged, the way tweets about the national anthem are interpreted, where you have the Smithsonian issuing opinions on traditional values of the nuclear family and delayed gratification and savings suddenly becoming that's just part and parcel of a white outlook and value system that is inherently racist. Well, when you expand the definition of racism like that, then yes, everything's going to be systemically racist, but that is not the case. And so I think Americans who do have goodwill toward everyone in our society, who want everyone to prosper, who want everyone to be safe, need to start pushing back on that narrative. It's a false narrative. It has its roots in division that can the FBI has established will show tentacles overseas, all to divide us. And we're not divided. We're the greatest experiment in history of bringing diverse cultures, creeds, ethnicities together in one country to enjoy prosperity and individual freedoms. And given the history of mankind, it's a miracle we've had any success at all. We've done a pretty good job, and most of us have goodwill towards our neighbors. We have to, Amy, we have to start pushing back against this narrative.
Yeah, and
everyone and everything is narrative.
I want to be specific about the pushback too. The pushback doesn't need to be confronting thugs in the streets that are throwing M80s and otherwise engaged in violence. The pushback needs to be against your own political leaders, like Somerville, Massachusetts Mayor Joe Curtatone, who, in response to a resident who complained about the thin blue line flag being displayed on the back of a local fire truck, along with the American flag, the thin blue line flag, and so on and so forth. He tweeted that the flags are now off the fire trucks, and there's an investigation underway to find out just how they got there. He said the people who did this horrible thing probably didn't realize how hurtful it would be to people in our community. People who did this, firefighters with thin blue line flags on solidarity with police officers. They're both first responders. This is something that is the subject of an investigation because people were hurt, Kevin, in Somerville, Massachusetts. So if you can't stand up against somebody like your local mayor when he has lost his mind in appeasing the mob or those who are part of the snitch culture, which I consider part of the mob, that's where the rubber meets the road for me. This is your elected official. It's time to stand up and give people a piece of your mind who you elected to represent you or who were elected to represent you. That's something everybody can do.
Precisely. And these politicians, Dan, all of them live in neighborhoods that are untouched largely by crime. Crime doesn't lap up on their shores. So it's easy for them to take these positions because their personal safety is not in peril. And if it were, then you see, like you see in Seattle and elsewhere, where their personal protection details will respond and protect them. That's not the case in certain neighborhoods in our urban areas that are being ravaged by crime. And that if you go and talk to those residents, want and welcome a police presence. It is a false narrative that they don't want the police there. Incidents of police misbehavior or brutality, which are isolated now statistically, are not the driving force within these neighborhoods. Their feelings are, we need the protection, and you're withdrawing it from us, and you're shaming the police, and yet you'll never need to call the police.
Well, it's appreciated as sort of a second level nature of anti-Americanism here, and you pointed out it's one thing to see what's obvious in front of you. People are not living up to America's values in terms of law and order and respect for one another and respect for other people's property and so forth. And then there's this secondary level of it's actually anti-American in terms of they're actually serving the interests of America's adversaries, and that's an important and under-discussed aspect of all of this. Kevin Brock, former Assistant Director of Intelligence for the FBI, was an FBI Special Agent for 24 years and Principal Deputy Director of the National Counterterrorism Center. And I will tweet out his piece on China and Russia that we were discussing at Dan Proft. Kevin Brock, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
I'm Dan Horn, co-owner of Horn McGowan Insurance Agency, a third-generation family-owned business founded in 1959 and a new customer of Signature Bank. When our previous bank couldn't secure a PPP loan for our business, we were referred to Signature. Right from the start, we were well taken care of. Our account was handled by one of the founders of the bank who offered real help in our time of need. Signature Bank is a better fit for our business because, like Horn McGowan Insurance Agency, they are local and they get things done. Signature's technology made our banking transition seamless, but it's their outstanding personal service that made all the difference.
Signature Bank is looking for their next success story. To learn more about turning your business vision into reality, visit signaturebank.bank. Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Oftentimes, the best defense our body has against getting sick is by having a strong, healthy immune system, and that's why I take Balance of Nature. Why? Well, to have a strong, healthy immune system, we've had doctors on the show saying that you need to get enough sleep, exercise, and eat a well-balanced diet. And raise your hand if you're doing that right now during these stressful times. I know I'm not. The kids aren't. So that's why we take Balance of Nature. 6 capsules a day. You're getting 10 servings of 31 different fruits and veggies. And you hear stories right here about how people's lives have changed. Well, guess what? The next story could be yours, but you have to order your Balance of Nature today. Here's what you do. Call this number, 800-246-87.